you've developed your own collection, and I would like you to explain to me how you developed that, and I want to understand from you if you consciously set out to collect work that was political in nature, or was it purely that it was, I know that the prerequisite had to be modern, and I believe you wanted it to be Arab, and you were looking to get a cross section from across the
That's
different
roughly
Arab
right.
nations. Is that
When I
right?
started buying in the early 2000s, I didn't have a plan. I bought works that I thought appealed to me. I used to travel to India a lot. So I bought a lot of Indian art. I used to travel to Turkey, and I bought a lot of strange artworks that I don't even recognize today. I don't even know who these artists are. So just like I think any endeavor, any human endeavor, it changes, it transforms, it morphs as time goes by, and you start realizing that, okay, well, what's important for me is, although again the region I identify with is South Asia to East Africa and North Africa, I need to concentrate. I have limited resources when it comes to financial resources, but I also don't have access to the other languages as much as I like. But with Arabic, it's my first language. I understand it completely, and I can relate. It's my story as well. And there were a lot of people who were acquiring Indian art and Iranian art and Ethiopian art and Turkish art and doing a great job. But who's acquiring, and Pakistani art, of course, but who's acquiring Arab art in general? There was only one or two others that I knew of. And I thought, let me try and to do this. But Malak, initially, the collection didn't have a direction. A. Two, it was contemporary in nature. And three, it was male dominated. And I feel like, yes.
Can I just stop you for a minute, Sultan? And can you explain to me and to the listeners
Okay, yes,
the
that's
difference
great. So
between modern
I
and
don't think anyone
contemporary?
can really answer that question completely. Yes, I
I
believe
always get confused. Yeah,
in my understanding, and this is a subjective, because there's a famous quote where there's a scholar who said you cannot prescribe a date to the beginning of modernity or the end of modernity and the beginning of contemporary art. It is like saying when did pollution start and end, and when did traffic jams start. And so it really is a process that could be over a couple of decades. But in my understanding of Arab art or West Asian and North African art in general, I would look at the beginning of modernity from the early 20th century until the 1980s. That is modernity for me. Contemporary art are really artists born from 1970 onwards. So anybody born after 1970 could be a contemporary
I
artist.
see.
Works that were created from 1990 onwards. That is how I look at contemporary art. Someone could give you a different metric. Someone could say, oh, no, 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 contemporary art really is the last 10 years. But for me, anything from 1990 onwards is a contemporary art piece.
Okay, interesting. All right. So your collection has then eventually evolved, and you have the Bergil Foundation, which now exhibits around the world. You have a space in Sharjah, but then the permanent collection moves around to different exhibitions around the world. Is that correct?
That's right. We have been fortunate to have a large space at the Sharjah Art Museum. Very grateful to them and the authorities in Sharjah. But then we're very active in showing the works around the world. We have now pieces on loan to museums and all over the world. And this is something that I'm keen on expanding. I'm keen on giving an opportunity to artists from the region to show. We even, I mean, I shouldn't be saying this out in a podcast, but in some cases we cover the costs of shipment so that we encourage museums to borrow art from the region. Some museums say we'd love to include this artwork, but we have no budget to cover the cost of insurance or logistics or transportation. I say, well, we'll cover it for you. You have to show them.
And the collection is how many pieces now?
It's difficult to count, but you can think of about 100, 1,500, 1,700. It's difficult to count because some works really are, they're diptychs or they're 10 photographs. Do you count them as one? Do you count them as
Sure.
10?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And is it purely pictorial, or are there also installations and what
We
is the
have mostly they're paintings, but we have sculpture. We have We have works on paper. We have installations. We have video. So all these different forms of art.
My podcast, as you know, is based on people's pivots in life, and I in my mind, I see one major pivot in terms of the trajectory of your life. Obviously, you will have to tell me what you think, but the collector in you, I believe, is the basis, and I don't think that you've pivoted from that. I think that's still your foundation, and your connection from that is what leads you to other things. What in your mind are your main shifts or pivots in the last 20, 30 years?
Malak, that really is a great question, and just thinking, even from the title of your podcast, it made me think about what are the pivots in my life, and I'm very happy to have been able to pivot, and I still keep a foot in the other lives, but be able to have the flexibility. To go into to reinvent oneself and think of oneself that we only have one life, we only have this is it. And so do I really want to do just one thing all my life and nothing else? I know that some people would like that, and I understand that's totally fine. But I thought, well, maybe there's another thing I can also do. So if you think of my life between 98 and 2000 and 7, 8, it was really a mostly a person involved in business and investments and fund management. That is where I dedicated most of my life. Collecting for me, although it started in 2002, was a side thing. In 2008, I started teaching in the UAE, very lightly part-time teaching in a college in Dubai. Then the Arab Spring happened, and I stopped teaching, and I was able to take time off from my business life, and I dedicated 20 hours a day, especially at the height of the uprising in Egypt, and Tunisia and Libya and Syria in the very first months. And then I couldn't. I found myself unable to give more. I don't have the energy, and so I withdrew. And a lot of people were disappointed, but I know myself. I know how much energy I can give, and I like about myself that I retreat when I feel like I cannot give anymore. I recognize my capacity, and I stop myself from being overloaded. And I saw the meltdowns, I saw the burnouts of many people, and you know some of them who had meltdowns publicly because they were unable to pull back from this super busy, super public life. By 2016 or 17, I pivoted into academia. And as every year, with every passing year, I was able to disengage from my family business and engage fully in academia, which complemented my art collection. So now I am
Exactly.
no longer
Yeah.
involved with my family business, which took most of my time 20 years
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back briefly, Sultan, and we're not going to discuss it in any great detail, but that heady period, and we were all I mean, I was in the region as well, that heady period of the Arab Spring, that particular year, 2011, um, you were living at a heightened pace. Did you burn out? Were you fearful for yourself at some stage? Did you, I mean, you've just said that you couldn't sustain that pace. Was it purely from a self-care point of view, or were you in some sort of fear? Were you feeling a bit in fear?
It's all of the above, and I will elaborate. First of all, I'm proud of my role during the Arab Spring. I'm very proud. I have zero regrets, and I still I feel very strongly for all the causes that people aspire to, whether it's more freedom of expression, democracy, more human rights, better standard of living, access to education, access to healthcare, all these things, that women emancipation, all these things that we all aspire to. This is something that I will never in my life change my mind about, and I will to my dying days say that I am proud of my role, and I wish things turn out for the better, and not for not how things turned out to. Um, the second thing is, yes, I had a fear of burnout. I was exhausted. Remember, it was just Tunisia. By the time Tunisia ended, January 11th, Egypt started, sorry, January 14th, Egypt started on Jan 25th. And so, and then you see Yemen and Libya and Syria, and it was nonstop. It was exhausting, and so I pulled back, and I said I am unable to give it. There is no way. These are institutions that do this. There are
Yeah.
companies that have
Yeah.
three different shifts, and each shift has many people. So I can't do that. And so, as proud as I was I'm equally proud of having pulled back when I thought I had to for my personal sanity and healthcare and self care. But also, and I won't try to sugarcoat this. There were instances where I was warned, and there were instances where I was told off, and there were whether it's a certain authority or whether it's a family or even hearing through the grapevine that there could be something. And I thought, you know what? I did my best, and I think it's time for me now to move on. And
Yeah.
just like I wasn't a career academic, I'm not a career a journalist or a career activist or somebody who bases their entire life. And I admire those who do. I admire that because there are people who have spent all their lives on being activists, and I cannot do that. I did this for a period of time,
Mm.
and I wanted to move on.
Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I think, as you said, there's only so much one man can do, one person can do, and you did your bit, and you did it very well. I'd like to move on to the academic world that you're immersed in now. And I know that it was from, you said 2016 was when it's really kicked in the US for you and in Europe. Give me a sense of the different types of programs that you were involved in, and I know that they've all been related in some way to always to the Middle East. Some were more political in nature, and now it's taken on an art uh, focus. Give me a sense of how that started and where you are today.
So, at the peak of my activism phase, I was approached by a center at Stanford University known as the Center for Democracy, Development, and Rule of Law. So, I did a summer program with them, and they taught us about the importance of rule of law, which I thought was very interesting, and I learned a lot. And then the following year, 2014 to 2016, I was affiliated with MIT, and I was a director's fellow going to MIT several times a year, spending time there on campus, meeting with the students, faculty, and other fellows. But by 2017, I was approached by, actually 16, 17, I was approached by Kevorkian Center, which is the center of New York University dealing with West Asia and North Africa. They call it the Near East. And so
That's very Orientalist of them.
yes, I wonder. It's quite an interesting name. I haven't seen it elsewhere. So, and I have some assumptions on why it's called the Near East Center. But in any case, I they had approached me about a class about the Arab Spring, and I thought, you know what? Let me we can cover the Arab Spring, but let's look at graffiti of the Arab Spring. And not the politics of the Arab Spring, the art of the Arab Spring. And so I sent them a proposal to look at the art of the modern so-called Middle East, West Asia, North Africa, and they liked it. And I conducted this workshop over a number of weeks in the spring of 2017 at NYU here in New York. And then the following year, I went to a number of universities, beginning with Yale University until today.
And how has the subject matter evolved with each iteration? I believe the last one you were at Harvard, and now you are in Columbia, correct?
That is right.
How has the focus shifted? I remember when you and I chatted last week informally, arranging today's interview, you had mentioned that you began by looking at things in a chronological order by decade and very sort of systematically. And now you're looking at things more in terms of themes. And I think that there is a movement in academia for learning about things in themes now, rather than sort of the old-fashioned way of history, if you like. How are you enjoying that more to what you had the way you'd been teaching before?
Um, so yes, the class has evolved. I can tell you, the readings have evolved. I've come across new readings over the past 5 years that has been published. New books. There's so much new scholarship from the region, but also because I sat in and audited so many classes in these universities. I'm so fortunate to have sat in classes at Columbia and at Georgetown and at Yale, and I learned from seasoned professors. And one thing, for example, is to let the students lead the class discussion. Instead of you leading the discussion, the students basically take the pilot seat and they lead the discussion and they ask each other questions. And this empowers the students, but also takes the responsibility of your hands. So it's really a win-win. And I remember doing a workshop at Yale University on teaching, and they said that the best classes where the teacher lectures for 10 minutes and then the students take over the class, and the role of the instructor is to moderate the discussion and make sure that everybody's engaged. But really, a good class is a class where the students are in the lead and not following, and not just merely passive listeners for 2 hours.
Mhm.
The other thing with regards to the themes, in some classes, I've included themes like U.S. government policy towards the region. In some classes, I've included themes of urbanism, and I add them and I remove them depending on the classroom environment. I also asked the students in the second week, do you like the way that the class is structured? Would you like us to change anything? We do art analysis. Just this week, I decided to move the analysis towards the end of the class rather than the beginning because I felt it took too much time. It took 30 minutes from the class discussion, but students have a lot of opinions. And doing art analysis, Malik, putting up an artwork and the students start dissecting it and analyzing it, I think gives an opportunity to a lot of students who are not as well versed in the region to speak up about what they think this color means, or what they think this person wearing white would signal. And so I have a lot of fun in my class. That's the most
I'm
important.
sure.
That's the most
Yeah.
important thing for me is I'm enjoying it, because if I enjoy it, I know that I can give more.